What's happening, everyone? Welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today is episode 119, and for this episode, I'm going to be reviewing a label that I've been scheming on for months and months, and I just never got around to doing this episode, but I'm ready to do it today. Today, we're going to talk about the prolific house label Workshop Germany. Workshop was started in 2006 by the well-loved and somewhat underground producer named Lowtec. Lowtec's name is Jens Kuhn, and in creating the Workshop label, he created one of the most interesting house labels of all time. And I use that description very carefully because there's a lot of house music out there, right? And within the realm of house, I would say there's two factions. There are the purists that like to make bright, uplifting, soulful house, the kind of house that would accompany maybe a Saturday at 4 o'clock barbecue where everybody's hanging out outside and it's almost like a block party, a street party. And the 9-year-old boys are dancing with the 8-year-old girls, and the dad's sitting in his lawn chair having a beer, and the wives are all talking. There's that type of house music where it's pure, and they go to bed by 9 o'clock, and they leave the party by 9, and they're in bed by 10, and then the following morning they go to church and they sing hymns, and everybody's feeling great the following day. And then that's the brighter side of house. And then on the darker side of house, there is the type of music where the party doesn't really start till 11 and people don't really get there until 1 in the morning. And that's the type of music that is almost like reflected by the type of people that go there. I shouldn't cast them as a specific type of people, but people that listen to dark music do so because on some level they feel dark inside, right? And that resonates with them, right? So if you're feeling depressed, or if you've got some struggles in your life, or if you've experienced different types of trauma, I feel like dark music resonates with you a lot more than somebody that just managed to get through life somehow without ever running into any major obstacles. It's like they don't get it, right? So I personally think that Workshop is geared towards people that have been through it, right? That's the type of music that I think it is. And if you look at the types of sounds and the obtuse, or not obtuse, but like the obscureness of the music that is put out on this label, it's almost baffling to find like the array of artists that have been represented on the label. And it's like as the catalog rolls through, just when you think they can't find another weird artist that makes house or experimental to bring onto the label, boom, there's another one, right? So the most recent release being an artist, PST, and if you listen to that double pack that just came out in 2021, that's the most recent release on Workshop, you'll see that it's all over the place. But Workshop's been all over the place from the very beginning, and you really truly never know what you're going to get with this label, and I absolutely love them for it. So they've managed to stay out of any cliches. There are absolutely no cliches. There's no templates. And that being said, if you look at the sales numbers and the popularity and the number of reviews that you'll see for the records on Workshop, I mean, people absolutely love this label. So major props to Lowtec, aka Jens. We really appreciate the music. And I can say that in my collection, I have, oh my gosh, I probably have 3/4 of the releases on Workshop, and that's really saying something, because there's got to be at least 50 records on the label to this point. So thank you very much, Lowtec. And for today, I think I have 6 records that I'm going to review for you guys. I hope that this helps you sift through the Workshop catalog if somehow you missed it, or if you're coming a little bit late to the party. I will refine the Workshop catalog down to the best picks, in my opinion, and help you explore and maybe make some purchases later on. The first pick that I'm going to make for you is actually a double pick. I'm gonna give you 2 samples kind of back to back, because I think they're both reflective of the same sound. So I'm going to start with Workshop 3 by Kassem Mosse and also Workshop 8. Now on both of these, there's the tracks that I'm going to highlight for you are both on the B side, and this is the era of Kassem's catalog that has all the nasty tech house in it. If you look at Kassem's releases more recently, they've gone a little bit more experimental, so less club oriented. But in the beginning, I think the thing that really made Kassem famous were these like grimy after hours tracks, right? And when I listen to these tracks here, what I think of is those after hours parties that I'll be honest, I don't even have the courage to go to these types of events anymore because I just turned 40 recently. But when I was in my late 20s and early 30s, all of the after hours parties in Philadelphia, they started late, and it was a guarantee, it was a lock that they were in a bad neighborhood. And if you went with a friend, you were doing okay. You less chance of having something bad happen out in the street when you're with a friend. But some of the things that you would see, even just forget about the stuff that happened in the parties. When you would leave the party, just the time spent walking from the front door to the car, you never knew what you were going to get. And I just remember, even in my late 20s and early 30s, when I was arguably more reckless, just walking with my guard up, right? Like just looking out for the robbery, looking out for somebody that's up to no good, because that's basically like what you had to endure to go to these after hours experiences. But I really do feel like in these two records here that Kassem captured the essence of that perfectly. And now moving up to Workshop 12, this is possibly the pinnacle of Kassem's production career, or at least the beginning of his ultimate breakout phase. And here you can see the logo here for Workshop 12. It's got a very hipstered out guy with his big glasses and his big beard and his sweatband. Interestingly and ironically, the real producer behind the name Kassem Mosse is Gunnar Wendell, and he doesn't look like this at all. So I would imagine that this is probably just done for either to intentionally mislead as like a joke, or for a little bit of marketing, right? To apply to give the implication that if you listen to this record, you're going to hear some hipster house inside. I don't know that it's hipster house. I think it's actually aged very well, and I think the most intriguing aspect of this record is the sophistication of the vocal that appears in the intro. For the first 2 or 3 or 4 minutes of the track, which is a 14-minute record, there is a vocal that sounds like a woman saying in a very soft tone sexuality or sensuality or enchilada, right? There were a lot of people joking around about what that vocal actually said. And the reason that it's so easy to misinterpret that is that the vocal is strategically cut off just in the last millisecond of the last syllable to where you can't really tell what the original word was that you were supposed to be listening to. And on top of that, I think the vocal slightly morphs where it's not exactly the same phrase repeating. Although it seems like it's close to the same, it's not exactly the same if you really listen to it and pick it apart as you listen to it. But the vocal combined with some really deep acid stabs and the 14-minute duration made this really, I think, one of the absolute mainstays of the Workshop catalog. And if you were only going to own 3 maybe out of the whole Workshop catalog from 2006 to now, I would say this is one of them. Sometimes when I'm listening to music on YouTube, I'll have a track playing and I have another browser tab open and maybe I was reading an article. The second browser tab, I don't know if you've ever had this happen, will sometimes start playing a commercial, right? So you start to hear random chatter mixed in with the YouTube track that you were playing. And a lot of times when that happens, you're like, what the hell is going on? Is this part of the track? And you don't realize it for a minute or two later that you actually had 2 browser tabs open and the other one just sort of came back to life spontaneously. I don't know why the hell some of those ads run that way, but they do. So the first time that I listened to this Marcellus record, this is Workshop 16, I had that same effect happen, except I only had 1 browser tab open. Actually, I didn't have any browser tabs open, but I thought I did because it had that same chaotic vocal feeling in it. If you listen to the beginning of this record, it's pretty random. The track is called From the Air, and it's listed as the A2 on the record. The reason it's the A2, there's a A1 that's almost like a little DJ tool of just kind of random studio generated sounds, but really the A2 is the A1, and it's one of those odd things where I feel like this track was designed specifically to trip people out. Like, I don't think Workshop in general, I don't think Workshop is for music, is for listeners that like to stay sober for long periods of time, right? Like there's straight edge, clean cut people that listen to certain types of house music. I don't think the Workshop crew is, and the Workshop audience is really that gang. I think it's people that like to be taken places, like to go outside of their comfort zone, and like to get weird. And tracks like this, where the vocals just represent basically nothing, but also create a vibe at the same time, do that very well. The track's only 7 or 8 minutes long, but as you move towards the second 2/3 and maybe the final coming down the home stretch, it settles into a completely alternate rhythmic vocal of a guy whispering that has completely no ties back to the beginning. So in that regard, I do feel like this represents a house music journey, and one that a lot of people that really follow this label love. and we're now at Workshop 20, and this is Lowtec here. I bought this because I absolutely love the B1 on here, and I came to love and appreciate the B1 even more when I sat and listened to it recently, because I was describing this a few episodes ago. I put my subwoofer under my table, so now I listen with my feet and legs rested up on it. So now the bass is actually physically hitting my body in a way that it wasn't before, and I think that makes tracks with sub bass and really ridiculous bass lines stand out and really just strike me harder. The B1 here has a very strange quality of introducing a crazy sub bass pretty early in the track, but the complexity and the intensity of that sub bass just absolutely reaches a pinnacle to where like you can't take it anymore, and just as strongly as it was hitting it, it suddenly is taken away, and you're just left with the upper tier of the frequency band, right? So like the high frequencies are the only thing left, and the lows are just completely sucked out of the mix towards the end, and you are suddenly put into the position of realizing how deep down you went with this track. Like you went all the way to the bottom, and then you were catapulted right back up. And closing out the episode is a record from the catalog that doesn't have a number associated with it. I believe this came out in 2012, and this is the Workshop XX release by Magic Mountain High. My favorite pick on here is the A1, and I selected this because I think it's very representative of the era of techno and tech house that was really popular, I would say, from 2013 to 2015. And I know I just said this is 2012, and I think that's important because this was ahead of its time. I think this was at the front of the demented, twisted up curve that I'm about to describe to you. So if you think of the producers that were hot back then, really hot, right? And Me, like ampersand Me, and Me, I think he was called. And more importantly, Tale of Us, Recondite, right? Those guys were all dropping that gnarly, twisted, basically like drug influenced music. And that Magic Mountain High record that I just had in my hand, just think of Tale of Us double pack CD on Renaissance. That was just an epic selection of crazy dark music. I think that record would have fit right into that mix perfectly. It was just something that like think of the combination of Minologue and all of the darkness that Tale of Us could possibly conjure up coming together in one beautiful symphony. It's one of the most techno-ish tracks out of the Workshop catalog, and it just really goes to show the diversity that Workshop's able to bring. All right, that's all for my workshop episode today, guys. Stay tuned in the future. At some point when I'm ready, I'm going to do part 2 and handle the second half of the catalog. But for now, we'll just have to work with the first part. I hope you enjoyed these picks, and feel free to make recommendations from the 2007 to 2014 era down below in the comments. Thank you and take care.